So I spun a rod bearing in my engine. Yeah, pretty bad news. So in this series of videos, I'm going to be going through basically everything you need to do to pull the engine, take it apart, replace all the parts, do all the measurements, and then hopefully put it back together and it'll all be good as new. Before we do anything, I'm going to turn the car on so I can show you guys what it sounds like when you're getting rod knock. It's a pretty distinguishable sound, so if you hear it, there's a good chance you have a rod knock and you spun a rod bearing. So here it is. The first thing we're going to have to do is drain the coolant and remove the radiator. That's going to help free up some space so we can start working and removing components off the front of the engine. Alright, so first things first, we got to jack up the car. Before you do anything, make sure you remove the ground connector on your battery. It's the black connector. This is a 10 mil. You just loosen the bolt on the side, take it off, and then put it off to the side. Alright, so right under here on the passenger side, right underneath right on the corner of the radiator right here, there's going to be a spot for you to stick a Phillips screwdriver, and you just unscrew it, and then all of your coolant will just start pouring out. I just got one of these like cooking trays, and I'm going to drain it into this. Oh, and don't get that in your eyes. I should be wearing safety glasses. I'm going to go get them right now. See how it stopped draining? All you got to do is take off the radiator cap and it'll start coming out. Alright, so now that it finished draining, we're just going to put the plug back in so we don't lose it and it won't be dripping while we're trying to work. There we go. Alright, so now we're going to remove the connectors that power the two radiator fans. There's one on this side and one on the other side. The one on this side is right here. And all you got to do is just go in with the flathead and just push that tab in right here. And then it should just pop right out. Like that. So this one's going to be on the driver's side. So you're going to have to just get under here. And then you're going to see it's going to be right above the lower radiator hose. You'll see the connector. It's right here. All you gotta do is go in there, push that tab down, these tabs get stuck sometimes, so you gotta really kind of push on them to make sure they go down. And then you can push it out like that. Next, we remove the coolant reservoir. And on the coolant reservoir, you're going to see there's this tab right here. And all you got to do is push that in right here. And as you're pushing that tab in, you're going to rotate this, and then it's going to slide out. And all you got to do is turn that, remove the hose, and then it'll come just straight out like that. Next, we'll remove these three hoses. One's right here, here, and here. Alright, all you gotta do is take some pliers and just squeeze the tab and then just wiggle it off. Do the same on these two. There might be some coolant still left in the line, so make sure you have a pan down there. So when you pull it out, you can put your thumb over it and then pour it in there. You can use your nail. I wouldn't really recommend shoving like a flathead in there to pry it out, because then you could scratch the surface and then you can cause a leak. So you just finesse it out and then it'll come right out. Next, we're going to go back under the car on the driver's side. where the lower radiator hose is and remove that one. Make sure you have a container ready because there's probably going to be liquid inside there. Since we're pulling out the engine, I'm just going to remove it on the other side too, and then go tug on it a little more. There we go. Yeah, this sucker's on there. Totally missed the pan. And it's off. I ended up having to disconnect both ends to be able to turn it and wiggle it out. Next, we're going to remove the two upper radiator brackets, which is this one on the right and then this one on the left. And it's a 12mm bolt. Up like that. It has a little rubber grommet where these little tabs slide into, so you just pull them straight up. Alright, so all you gotta do now to get the radiator out is just pull to the right a little bit and then just straight up. Make sure the hose is out of the way. See, it's still draining. I have another pan right here that I'm gonna hold it over. Just gonna plug it real quick and just put it right down. So now there's a ton more room in here to be able to start working all the components on the front of the engine. But since I don't need the car to be jacked up to work on this, I'm gonna drain the oil and then lower the car. So the drain plug is a 17mm. It's right here. Alright, so I don't have a stock airbox in here, but what I'm going to do is to remove this is just loosen up this right here with the flathead screwdriver. Remove the connector to the mass airflow sensor. Alright, now we're going to remove the plastic cover right here. It just has one bolt on the left side. It's a 10mm. And then you just pull up, and it has a little tab that just snaps in on the right side. And now I'm going to finish removing the upper radiator hose. Same thing, so the other one just has a clamp that you just pinch and then wiggle out. Alright, so next we're going to move the V-belts right here. Now, I'm going to be replacing them, so I could just cut them off, but I'm going to show you right here is the bolt that moves the alternator up and down to put tension on the belt, and I'm just going to loosen it and then remove it. So you gotta loosen this bolt, and this one. There we go. There's two connectors on the alternator. You gotta remove this red one right on top, where it has a little tab on this side. Push in. There's the bolt, and then there's this one right down here. Just gonna go in, push on the tab with these pliers, or this, and then. So I went and pinched the top, and then used the flathead to just give it a little nudge, and then it just popped right out. See, gotta push in the tab right there. And then the nut holding on the connector on the top is also a 12 millimeter. I'm going to put the nut back on so we don't lose it. I can finish removing these nuts right here. The one right here on this side. It has this like locking nut that like locks into the back so you don't have to put a wrench on it. And the clamping on this side. This nut clamps the alternator to this bracket right here, and this one is what pivots the alternator up and down to put tension on the belt. I'm gonna have to lift the back up a little bit, and it should come out fairly easily, like that. That's not a joke. All right. And there we go. Alright, so for this belt on the right here, the manufacturer actually says for you never to reuse it. So I'm just going to cut it off because it's going to make everything a lot easier. And this belt is the one that runs your AC compressor. Alright, next we want to be able to get to the secondary air pump. And to do that, I'm going to take out the battery so we can get at the bolts on the side right here. Alright, so first thing we gotta do is remove this cover. It's on the front of the pump right here. To do that, we just get a flathead and unscrew this plastic screw. And you just pull on it, there's little clips that should just release. Just keep your finger on it. There's a clip. One broke off, but I actually don't know when that happened. But yeah, there's just these two set of clips right here. There's a bolt on one on the front right here, one down here, and then one on the back. I use a 10 mil. And the other one right here. And then the last one right here. And then remove the power connector that's right under here. Alright, so now that all the bolts are off, you come in here, right here on the hose, slide that back, and now just wiggle it, and it should come right out. Alright, so now we're going to remove the bracket that was holding on the secondary air pump. There's two bolts, one here and one there, and this is a 12 millimeter. So I want to be able to get out the AC compressor without removing the lines, because that means I would have to evacuate the Freon. So we're just going to want to unbolt it and move it to the side so we can remove the engine. There's a large bracket here that the compressor is bolted to, and the bolts are running this way. But the one in the back you can't get to be able to unbolt it. So we're going to have to remove the entire bracket to be able to unbolt the AC compressor. But this bracket needs to get reinstalled because this is where we're going to hook onto to be able to lift the engine out. Alright, so there's 2 bolts on this side, one here and one there. Alright, and then there's another 14mm bolt right here. The last bolt holding this bracket on is directly down here, but to be able to get a extension and a swivel joint down in there, you're gonna have to remove these 2 vacuum lines. So this one, yes, pull off, and then this one you can just push down on it. And just rotate that out of the way. There's the vacuum lines, and right there is the bolt. So you just need to go in there with the extension, swivel, and a breaker bar. Alright, so now that we unbolted the bracket, we could rotate it and get to the 4 bolts that are on the side right here. There's one here, here, down here, and one up here. Now I grab the 12mm and just loosen these up. So the AC pump is completely unbolted, but these 2 lines are still attached to it because if you want to remove these, you have to evacuate the Freon. I don't want to have to do that. So what I'm going to do is when I'm going to lift the engine out, I'm just going to swing this over to the side. But for right now, I'm just going to leave it right here. I'm going to bolt that bracket back on, and then we'll start working on removing the power steering pump that's right here. Alright, so there's only 3 bolts holding on the power steering pump. There's one here, here, and then one in the back that I'll show you in a second. So I'm just going to take my 12mm with an extension. Just going to come in right here. Alright, so on the back of the power steering pump, right there, right there, that's the last bolt that we got to get out. Alright, so all that's left is to remove this one connector right here. Now I'm just going to take the pump and put it over here where the air intake would be. Just leave it right there. It's out of the way. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Alright, so the next thing we're going to remove is the blow-off valve and the intercooler. Alright, so to remove the blow-off valve, we just take a 10mm socket, and it's just 2 bolts. One right here, and the other one right here. Pull that vacuum line off, move the clip up right here, and pull the valve out. There's 3 12mm bolts holding on the intercooler. There's one on this side and 2 on the other. Just gonna remove this one first. The two 12mm bolts on this side are actually bolted directly to the turbo. So alright, so all that's left now is to loosen up this clamp right here with the flathead screwdriver. And now you can just pull the intercooler right out. So the next thing we're going to have to do is disconnect the fuel lines. There's 2. There's one right here and here. So what I did was went to the store and bought these cheap disconnects. Came with like 8 of them at Harbor Freight. Now, they don't, on the top fuel line it actually doesn't fit. So I had to cut it in half and then sand it down. And then, so I could slide one side in, and then the other side we're going to need to put a pick in there to be able to disconnect the fuel line. Alright, so make sure you have gloves and eye protection on when you do this. And get a rag. I'm just going to put it right under here. Alright, so on the plastic tab, there's these 2 notches, and you want to have that straight up because the clip is actually on each side, either side of that notch. What we're going to do is take this half, and I'm going to slide it in there. And then take this pick, go in there, and just pry up real, like not a lot of pressure, just a little bit. And then it should disconnect. Like that. If there's still some fuel pressure, a little bit of fuel might squirt out, so just be careful. And then just drain out whatever is inside. Now on the bottom, you actually don't need to use the pick. You can actually slide both halves of the disconnect tool inside. Just make sure that tab is oriented. Just make sure these 2 notches are oriented straight up. And now last, all you gotta do is remove this hose right here.